Welcome to my first response to Deconverted Man. There is a lot to cover, but it is lengthy to the point that I should divide it into parts. To start, I will concede that I very well may have recorded my video underwater. But please don't leak this to any of your followers, though. This is our little secret. More seriously, I'll begin. To start, Deconverted Man replies to my nihilistic argument of saying, I don't buy that argument, it matters now. The argument is that everything is meaningless if our lives are finite, compared to an infinite eternity, but deconstructed man considers our finite lives more valuable due to its limited time. My response to this is to ask what matters about it. What numerical value can you place on this time? This perspective is incredibly tiny. When you step on an ant, do you think, gee golly, I'm a murderer, I deserve to be put to death? I assume not. We assign arbitrary values to our lives. You began by speaking of ethics, but what is moral about ethics? It is purely convenience. When one innocent can be murdered to save 100 more, how do you choose? Do you think in absolutes? Never kill an innocent? Or do you think in gray values, the minority for the majority? To you, sacrificing one to save many might seem right. If you were on the chopping block, however, you would probably say that it is wrong to murder you. From a grand perspective, it may seem right to make small sacrifices, but there are two problems with this. Firstly, we are guaranteeing we never reach an ideal state with compromise. By making small concessions here and there, we are in fact guaranteeing we will never reach a perfect solution. The second issue is that ethics cannot ignore ownership. Sacrificing our own lives for others is within our right, but what of another person? Do we have a right to steal the life of another and gift it to others? This belief system is innately flawed. There is no longer any objective evaluation of right and wrong. If we cannot deal with objective concepts, then everything is functionally meaningless. Everything seems important right now, but in the grand scheme it is all incredibly insignificant. Another scenario. If you endure the worst suffering ever right now, you can gain an eternity of wealth. From a broad perspective, the obvious answer should be, let me suffer now for future rewards. But being confronted with a lifetime of suffering, it is easy to think, do I really need that eternal blessing? Looking at a small scale is detrimental to the whole, and if we place a numerical value on our lives, it becomes increasingly insignificant over a greater span of time. One could say that to reject math is to reject reality. What we are essentially dealing with is calculus, where x over infinity approaches zero. It might not be considered zero, but it is functionally zero. Functionally, everything that seems important right now is incredibly insignificant for the whole, unless there is justice served over eternity. Your second argument is that the story would get boring if we dragged on. That's quite arbitrary, to be honest. From our finite perspective, things might drag on as we appear to learn all there is. If we view it from a perspective that we are progressing and learning, however, it could be very well that we are become more satisfied. That argument isn't really meaningful. You next responded to my view of the past and future being irrelevant in a worldview without eternity or justice by saying that is a weird view. I'd respond to that by saying it is the most logical take. You, yourself, stated that this life is the most precious time. If that is the case, then both the past and future should be disregarded in favor of the present. I don't see how that is weird, since you essentially made the argument yourself. Your next argument was that you're pro-utilitarianism, admitting that it is a flawed system, but saying that divine command is the worst. Your argument is that you cannot know right and wrong, and are instead being told right and wrong by a deity that you cannot know exist. This argument has a few errors in it. Baseless faith is substantially different than proven faith. Knowing who our Creator is an entirely different conversation. One of my favorite quotes comes from a writing that was rejected by the Catholic Church, but comes from Peter in the Recognitions of Clement. Do not think that we say that these things are only to be received by faith, but also that they are to be asserted by reason. For indeed, it is not safe to commit these things to bare faith without reason, since assuredly truth cannot be without reason. And therefore, he who has received these things fortified by reason can never lose them, whereas he who receives them without proofs by an assent to a simple statement of them, can neither keep them safely nor is certain if they are true. There is a lot we can prove from the world around us, namely, moral consistency is a start. As we would have done unto ourselves, we should do unto others. That should be the first premise for knowing who our Creator is. Secondly, we should appeal to prophecy. If we want to know who He is, surely the ability to accurately prophesy of future events in detail is substantial evidence of who to go to for accurate information. I cover this in my other video, Why the God of Israel. Integrity is a key virtue in discerning such things, but unfortunately people lack integrity. Firstly, with the sacrifices and eating of creatures, the willingness to infringe on other people's lives for the sake of our advantage. Think business. It is a competition where some win and some lose, where we don't consider the losers. With such moral inconsistencies, it is no wonder we struggle to know who our Creator is, and therefore struggle to know His commandments. You next argued that even if their life is meaningless outside of eternal judgment, it doesn't prove there is justice. That is correct, but I didn't make that argument. My first argument was about wisdom and not proof. Every action we take, we treat as if it has value. Our whole life is governed by purpose. Without purpose, our existence lacks relevant substance. Wisdom, therefore, dictates that we pursue knowledge of purpose that is truly meaningful. Spending your time denying eternal justice is to nobody's advantage. It simply promotes chaos and inconsistency. By treating our lives as random, created by chance and without justice, we defeat the point in doing anything at all, since we cannot be truly certain of anything and gain nothing from it. You next argue that if you torture me for 5 hours and then erase my memory, you still remember my suffering. You then claim that, in your view, it is ethically wrong to torture me in that way. And my response is asking how significant this wrong is. Are we talking gravely wrong or minimally wrong? I suffered 5 hours and then lived 50 years more. It is hardly any different than a woman bearing a child. She embraces the suffering in the short term for the reward in the long term. The suffering is insignificant related to the long term. You can argue it is wrong, but this wrong could be considered entirely insignificant. You then said, so what if this is a meaningless world? We still have to operate in it. We do not. We could stop breathing in this very moment and suffer for a few minutes before dying and no longer caring. Something or someone caused us to cherish our lives. Whether you consider it evolutionary or by a divine creator is another discussion, but there was a primary cause for us to place value on our own survival. We clearly care about surviving, or we would not continue our lives. If we cherish our current existence so much, then the wiser approach is to treat our lives as having an eternity with justice. Your next point was regarding what a perfect judgment would look like. You bring up the idea of meeting others after your life that you've interacted with, and then feeling the feelings you've caused on others and experience it for the time that they experienced it. You then raise the point that after you've dealt with all that, what next? Your argument is that we then just exist. To answer this, I'll explain what my belief about the subject is. According to Peter, in the Homilies of Clement, which I consider the wisest writing I've read, it is about which kingdom we partake in. To start, Peter raises this point. And Peter said, are not those, then, who you said received justice, themselves transgressors, inasmuch as they are in the kingdom of the other, as is it not by overreaching that they have obtained all they possess? While those who are thought to act unjustly are conferring a favor on each subject of the hostile kingdom, so far as they permit him to have property. For these possessions belong to those who have chosen the present, and they are so far kind as to permit the others to live. This is true in that business is competition. Winners gain everything, and losers lose their homes. If one pursues something, like let's say moral philosophy, they are unlikely to gain an income suitable to provide for them. Big business owners, however, push and deceive others into bad deals that gave them disproportionate degrees of wealth while feeding the scraps to the people under them. An example from my life, for example, came from when I worked at Amazon. Amazon had many rules and regulations about how parcels were supposed to be delivered for both the deliverer's safety and the customer's safety. With these guidelines in place, they convince everyone that they are taking their job seriously. They then hired various distribution companies to compete with each other. Whoever delivered the quickest would get the most business. The number crunches became so insane that we were expected to deliver each parcel in less than 2 minutes while traversing various cities. If one of us was slow, everyone else would get upset because the work was then put onto them. One day an old lady was killed because someone's van rolled backwards into her down a hill. Amazon wasn't given any of the responsibility. Despite being responsible for the time pressure that the individual was under, they found a way to take advantage of the system and come out on top. This was entirely unjust, but that is how our system works. The crafty gain the advantages while the innocent suffer. Those who consider other lives to the same extent as their own die early deaths and lose their homes. As such, Peter rightly stated that those who of this hostile kingdom gain the wealth, while the innocent of the next kingdom suffer. Similarly, I live in Canada. Very disproportionately, Alberta does most of the work. Despite their many contributions, the wealth is distributed to Ontario and British Columbia. The one who worked the hardest gained disproportionately less for their work. Similarly with taxes, greater taxes are expected of more wealthy businesses. After a certain degree of wealth, however, it becomes more beneficial to gain more money. It isn't just, but that is how business works. This is the premise for which Peter addresses the next point. The prophet of the truth who appeared on earth taught us that the Maker and God of all gave 2 kingdoms to 2, good and evil, granting to the evil the sovereignty over the present world along with law, so that he should have the right to punish those who act unjustly, but to the good he gave the eternal to come. But he made each man free to the power to give himself up to whatsoever he prefers, either to the present evil or the future good. This then is the parable. Now listen to the actual truth. The prophet of the truth, who appeared on earth, taught us that the Maker and God of all, gave 2 kingdoms to 2, good and evil, granting the evil the sovereignty over the present world along with the law, so that he should have the right to punish those who act unjustly, but to the good he gave the eternal to come. But he made each man free with the power to give himself up to whatsoever he prefers, either to the present evil or the future good. Those men who choose the present have power to be rich, to revel in luxury, to indulge in pleasures, and to do whatever they can, for they will possess none of the future goods. But those who have determined to accept the blessings of the future reign, I have no right to regard as have no right to regard as their own the things that are here, since they belong to a foreign king, with the exception only of water and bread, and those things preserved with sweat to maintain life, for it is not lawful for them to commit suicide. And also one garment, for they are not permitted to go naked on account of the all-seeing heaven. This addresses your point in this way. It isn't so much about equal payment as eternal proportionate payment based on which kingdom we choose to partake in. By pursuing the advantage of ourself at the cost of others, we disqualify ourselves from the kingdom of the innocent. Those who treat other lives as equal to or greater than their own prove themselves worthy of eternal blessings, and the extent of their blessings would relate to their good deeds in earth, but be eternal. It is like authority. He who unjustly suffers the most in this life would gain a degree of prestige for eternity. As the world progresses in a positive way for eternity, their prestige remains in that time frame. Similarly, those who pursued their own advantage at the cost of others would be disqualified from this kingdom, and instead would get a proportionate punishment for eternity. The scum of the earth in this life would have their deeds trailing with them for eternity, and people would know what their deeds warranted. Your next point that you raised was the question of why God didn't put us in a better place, but instead here. There are several points to make in this regard. Again, Peter addresses this matter. But, you say, God ought to have made us at first so that we should not have thought at all of such things. You who say this do not know what is free will, and how it is possible to be truly good, that he who is good by his own choice is really good. But he who is made good by another under necessity is not really good, because he is not what he is by his own choice. Since, therefore, everyone's freedom constitutes the true good, and shows the true evil, God has contrived that friendship or hostility should be in each man by occasions. Without free will, we cannot be either good or evil. We are simply what we are. Purpose requires free will. For purpose to exist, we need to be able to choose to do good or to do evil. and therefore it is according to our own choices that we gain rewards and punishments. Then, so as we choose, we are either abundantly rewarded or abundantly punished according to our deeds. Additionally to this, Peter explains that it is for this very reason that there are evil corruptions written in the midst of true writings from the words of our Creator. Then I, Clement, hearing this, said, How say you, my lord, that even falsehoods of the Scriptures are set forth happily for the proof of men? And he answered, The falsehoods of the Scriptures have been permitted to be written for a certain righteous reason, at the demand of evil. And when I say happily, I mean this. In the account of God, the wicked one, not loving God less than the good one, is exceeded by the good in this one thing only, that he, not pardoning those who are impious on account of ignorance, through love towards that which is profound, desires the destruction of the impious. But the good one desires to present them with a remedy. For the good one desires all to be healed by repentance, but saves those only who know God. But those who know him not, he does not heal, not that he does not wish to do so, but because it is not lawful to afford to those who, through lack of judgment, are like irrational animals, the good things which have been prepared for the children of the kingdom. And additionally he expounds on this. For the Scriptures have joined to them many falsehoods against God on this account. The prophet Moses, having by the order of God delivered the law, with the explanations to certain chosen men, some 70 in number, in order that they also might instruct such of the people as chose, after a little the written law had added to it certain falsehoods contrary to the law of God, which made the heaven and the earth and all things in them, the wicked one having dared to work this for some righteous purpose. And this took place in reason and judgment, that those might be convicted who should dare to listen to the things written against God, and those who, through love towards him, should not only disbelieve the things spoken against him, but should not even endure to hear them at all, even if they should happen to be true, judging it much safer to incur danger with respect to religious faith than to live with an evil conscience on account of blasphemous words. In other words, wickedness and corruption have been permitted for the sake that we may choose as we see fit. Choosing to believe and do wickedness is necessary for the sake of free will, and choosing to do and believe the best is worthy of its eternal reward. This is all for the sake of purpose, that we may exist in our proper place for eternity and receive our proportionally disproportionate rewards. Confusing wording, but the point is that our rewards and punishments are disproportionate but eternal. Are proportionate, but they are eternal. At this point, I have only made it 13 minutes of 44 through your video, but the response is lengthy so that I should divide this into parts. With that in mind, I'll end my first response here. Thank you for your time.